Hello friends, good morning, good afternoon, good evening based on what time you're watching this video. Friends, I hope that you're doing very well with your health and I'm confident that at this point in your life you have made studies as your best buddies. Friends, this video is for two important purposes. One is discussing ABC analysis relevant for November 2020 exams CA final, and second is discussing the revision test paper of November 2020 CA final. Friends, you have to understand that you are in the last stage of your revision, which means that if at all I go with our module book name, which is Study, Revise, Crack, now you're into the third stage. Studies you have done at the time of classroom discussion or your live classes or your Google Drive classes. Revision, most of you would have done at least one revision or in process of revision. And now the third stage is very important, cracking the subject, and our objective is not simply cracking the subject, it is to get more than 70 plus marks. All of you should be targeting that exemption because indirect taxation in your group 2 happens to be one of the most scoring subject, and this will help you out a lot in not falling into the trap of your aggregate. Right. Now, when you talk about your exam day revision, friends, you have to understand that the material that you are using, say Study, Revise, Crack or any other author's text or even ISM, should not be the main material. That should be kept aside. The main material that you should be using for your exam day revision should be the master Q bank that you have referred or referring to. Right. That along with the notes in your master Q bank, that should be the main material which you are using for revision, and that too when you are revising from the material, if you have doubts you can always refer the main material that you have referred. Now, second important thing, when you are revising, you are not required to go through the sequence which is given in the master Q bank or the material. No, you have to understand the importance of each chapter and you have to go with the priority. Friends, it is not possible for every one of you to revise all the chapters a day before exam. Revision before the exam day is the key for you to get to that 70 plus marks. Friends, I would like to tell this very clearly. You may have mastered the subject, but if at all before the exam day you are not in a position to revise the entire thing or at least the most important areas, your confidence comes down and obviously it is reflected when you are writing your exam. That requires thorough revision of important chapters and the most important chapters, and less important chapters you have walked through to make sure that you are able to crack the MCQs. Right. The first part will be entering into where you are going to discuss about ABC analysis for your GST and ABC analysis for your customs and foreign trade policy. Friends, let us first focus on ABC analysis for your GST. And before I start with ABC analysis of your GST, again I would like to make it very clear that this ABC analysis is based on what? On your exam papers of May 2018, November 18, May 19 and November 19. Plus your revision test papers specifically May 2020 and November 2020 and recent amendments. Right, this is based on these backgrounds where we have analyzed what are important topics and for how much marks questions have been asked from which chapter. Based on that your ABC analysis have been prepared. A, the most important areas of the chapters, B, important areas of the chapters, and C, the least important areas of the chapter. And one more thing, friends, when I tell ABC, it is not that you are going to focus only on A part and B part. Even C part you have to walk through. You have to just walk through. Right, subject to the time availability, you have to walk through to ensure that you are able to attend MCQs from those areas as well. Friends, your target should be at least you are talking about 22 plus marks out of 25 marks approximately when you talk about MCQs of GST. This is with respect to GST. And friends, with respect to your customs, your target should be at least 3 plus marks out of 5 marks in your customs MCQs. Approximately, it is not that strictly 25 marks will come of MCQs in GST and 5 marks of customs will come. Approximately, on a nutshell, your focus should be 25 plus marks. 25 plus, and easily, friends, you can secure that 27, 28 or even 30 marks. 27, 28 is actually very easy. To go to that 29 and 30 marks will require an extra effort, but the target should be easily 25 plus. Target should be either 25, 26, 27 or 28 plus marks when you talk about your MCQs. And friends, when you are cracking your MCQs with so much confidence. The other questions which are descriptive types, you will be finding that confidence reflected when you are writing those answers. So very important area. So C part, give least priority, at least walk through it with respect to questions that might be asked from your MCQs. Now let us start discussing your MCQ. Let us start discussing your ABC analysis with respect to your GST. Now, friends, the first focus is on A, most important areas. A, B is important, C is less important comparatively, right? Now friends, when you talk about most important area, needless to tell, anyone will tell that the most important topic in your entire GST, which is of about 75 marks, is input tax credit. Input tax credit, entire chapter should be in your fingertips. Friends, you will be surprised if I tell that there were question papers where around 30 marks, or rather more than that, were only touching directly or indirectly input tax credit. When I am talking about this 30 marks, how we have derived the 30 marks, a few questions will be dealing with many other chapters as well along with ITC. And with respect to ITC, we have just taken that marks proportionately and found out. So ITC is so important. So important. You should be very thorough with your input tax credit chapter. And the first thing that you do before exam day of indirect taxation is touch this chapter, input tax credit. Make sure that you are very much thorough with all the questions in your master Q bank, and if you have any doubts, please refer to the material and get it clarified then and there. So that is the most important thing. Then you have your valuation chapter, again A part. Then you have your registration chapter, right? Entire registration, which covers 3 areas: taking registration, amendment of registration, and cancellation of registration, and another important area. And friends, next very important area where you're talking about small dealers. Those who have referred SRK material would know small dealers is a chapter where we are going to discuss about your exemption scheme and composition scheme. So in your ICI material, it is not given separately. Exemption is part of registration chapter and composition is part of levy chapter. Small dealers is extremely important. Otherwise also it was very important chapter, that is exemption and composition. Now it is very important because there are certain amendments, and this importance you can clearly understand while you go through your revision test paper of November 2020 exams, because you find 2 questions from this particular chapter, a very important chapter. Rather, after input tax credit for November 2020, I would tell that go through your small dealers chapter. You should be very much thorough. Then you are talking about refund. Again, refund, friends, just like small dealers, there are amendments in refund chapter, which you can easily expect in your, directly from amendments you can expect questions in your exam, refund. Then friends, you are talking about your payment chapter. In payment chapter, 2 things are very important and crucial. One is calculation of interest. Second is an amendment which talks about transfer of amount from one minor head major head of cash ledger to another minor head major head of cash ledger. So very important area. And needless to tell that you will have surely a question when you talk about your IGST Act, that is place of supply. Surprisingly, when you see your revision test paper of November 2020 exam, no direct question on place of supply is asked, maybe because of the fact that there are no much amendments. But nevertheless, if you take any of your exam paper or revision test paper or your mock test paper, past papers, you will find that place of supply is always asked, right? You are talking about section 7 to 9, which talks about your nature of supply, and 10, 11, 12, 13, which actually talks about place of supply. 10 and 11 for goods, 12 and 13 for services. Now friends, other areas, when you talk about your other areas of IGST Act, I have given that in C part. So section 7 to section 13 rather occupies the major chunk of the IGST Act. Other small provisions I have given under C part, less important area. Now friends, another very important chapter, most important chapter is classification, that is your exemption portion. Not all the entries of exemption, right? You have lot of entries in exemption chapter, which we have given industry wise around 30 or 30 plus entries we have given. Out of that, which entries you should be very much thorough and you should go through it for sure. One is government services, educational services, healthcare services, transportation services, legal services, importation of services and export similar services, and section 12AA services. Now these entries of your exemption you should be very much thorough with, I'll repeat, it is government, educational, healthcare, transportation of goods, transportation of passengers, legal services. We are talking about importation and export hacking services, and finally you are talking about section 12AA services. Repeatedly questions are asked only from this area. And friends, one more thing that I want to tell when you are talking about these entries, reverse charge mechanism also comes in your A part, that is very important part. When you talk about your reverse charge mechanism, for those who have referred SRK material, you will find that analysis of reverse charge mechanism is done along with your exemption chapter, right? Both are clubbed together, exemption along with RCM. So all the entries of reverse charge mechanism which has been discussed in your exemption chapter, that all the entries will be important. Say for example, you are talking about your security services or rent-a-cab services, which are recent amendments, very important. Or say for example, you are talking about other entries like your copyright services or transfer of any other rather copyright services covered in your RCM, or you're even not talking about specifically copyright when you're talking about writing books. All these areas are covered in your reverse charge mechanism, right? So needless to tell that this reverse charge mechanism is dealt along with exemption entries in our book, when beautiful flow charts and all the permutation combination examples are given. So make sure that you are going through those entries as well. So I'm clubbing this classification and RCM to be very specific. These very important entries along with entries which are connected to reverse charge mechanism. And then friends, if you see your exam paper or revision test paper, always you'll find that a question about demand and recovery is always there. Not about recovery, at least demand is always there. Your section 73, 74, 75, 76 are the base sections which is always touched upon. So that area you should not miss. This is all about your most important parts.